Thank you for auditing Professor Sky's Record Review, the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who's going to be talking about a remix album by Perfume Genius. Immediately, remixes. I'm going to start off with a family anecdote, as I like to do. Driving my daughter to the doctor the other day, we were listening to this remix album. And, we've listened to this album, the original album, Set My Heart on Fire Immediately, a lot. As you will see behind me, I have the vinyl opened up so you can see the inside cover if you've never seen it. We love this album as a family, we listen to it a lot. And I asked, what do you think of this album? And she just kind of folds her arms, she's in the passenger seat. Goes, I don't like remix albums. I was like, oh no? What's the point? Just write your own songs or just come out with something new. And I kind of probed it a little bit further and asked her what did she mean. It turns out this anger stems from disappointment. I guess maybe there was a Panic at the Disco. It announces on Thursday, new Panic at the Disco album to be released. And she gets all excited and then it's just remixes. And it can feel at times like a pointless, disappointing cash grab, right? Like, oh, I don't know, just remix, remaster, repackage, But to counter this, on the drive, I gave her roughly 3 reasons why remix albums are great and why good remix albums are great. And this, immediately, Remixes is a very good remix album. I'm going to give you 3 reasons, the 3 reasons I gave her, why I liked them. I didn't number them when I was talking to her. I'm not that organized to my thoughts. So the number 1 reason is revisitation. Just getting to relitigate my Perfume Genius review, getting to live with this music, the songwriting, see it all recontextualized and redone, and thinking about these beautiful lyrics, these haunting lyrics, the soundscapes, the way they were created originally versus the way they're created now. Truly, if you don't know the original album, Set My Heart on Fire Immediately, it really is one of the best albums of the year last year. I would say it's in a 3-way tie, with the Sarah Mara Chadwick and the Strokes. Just an amazing album that is so good. It's so good, in fact, that I am not listening to any other Perfume Genius albums on purpose. I'm not done with this one yet. I'm still getting so much from it on every single listen that only then, when I start to feel a little bit of that diminish, I will jump into the rest of his back catalog. But instead, instead of just kind of moving on to the next album or whatever it is, I get to stay here and think about this one album even deeper. My wife, who loves the original album, probably more even than I do, was over the moon. She was so excited that she gets to sit and listen to this new album. But I will admit, I was like my daughter. I was initially disappointed. I saw on Thursday in title albums released tomorrow, and that Perfume Genius is going to release another album? That doesn't sound right. He released a legitimate masterpiece less than 8 months ago. I'm going to get my hopes up. But it's a remix album. I was a little disappointed. But not for long. Because it was good enough. Because I could revisit it. The second reason I would say I like remix albums is that they are playfully serious and seriously playful. These things that you know and you love. Certainly a remix album of anything that you love. It's fun. People are having fun with this music. But they're also seriously playing with it as well. They're showing respect to the artist, they're showing respect to the original producer, everything. There's a great mixture between the playfully serious and the seriously playful, which is a great place to be in art. I don't think this happens in other genres, really. I don't think you can remix a book. I don't think you can remix a movie. You can rewrite a book, you can reboot a movie. But this is something that music does that I don't think other things can do. And that leads into my third reason why I like good remix albums. That is, it is the sort of the ultimate postmodern collaboration. What is new, what is old, what is commenting on what has already been made, what is self-consciously remaking, redoing something. It's sort of like the sample culture that we live in, taken to a certain degree to its logical end, where we have a cover song, but half of the cover is the original song itself. It's like a collaboration that's totally asymmetrical in time. So it's a collaboration where one person did 100% of the work up front, another person does 100% of the work in back, and then it ends up being a sort of weird collaboration cover, not a cover. Which leads to my basic concept of remixes and when they're great, is when they are not the same song, but not a different song. You hear the bones, or if you allow me to be poetic, you hear the soul of the song, the spirit of the song, if you don't want to be religious. But it doesn't, like, there's something happening to it. There's some kind of recontextualizing, some kind of changing, something that maybe draws your attention to an element of the song that hadn't been drawn to before, but you can't go so far that you lose that soul and you make it something totally different. A good remix has to walk that very fine line. And this album is chock full of these good remixes. In my original review, interestingly enough, I still have the props from my original review. Much to my wife's chagrin, I get these props and I leave them on the bookshelves. I don't always put them away. So this is the original Chanel No. 5 that I used for Perfume Genius. Get it? It wasn't funny then. It's not funny now, but it amuses me. So when I was talking about the original, I talked about how there was something off. Like there's something about the way the album was recorded and the way that he sings, in which everything just feels slightly off. And it feels intentional. It feels like he's trying to get you slightly uncomfortable, a little unheimlich, a little uncanny, you know? And every single mix on here maintains that in a different way. A cool thing is that it actually follows exactly the track listing, okay? So if you look at the track listing, it just follows the track listing. One song gets one remix. Very often in remix albums, you know, there's like the one song that everybody wants to do. So you have like 3 people covering the same song and they're remixing the same song, trying to do it, trying to like get the cool one. There's a cool restraint in this where every song has it. And so it makes it, you can do this, and we did this, listen to them back to back or one song and then after the other, and really feel this conversation between these very asymmetrical collaborators. For the most part, they go between 2 different modes. I would say a sort of a lot of numbers today. I don't usually do so many numbers in my review. 3 reasons I like it, 2 different kinds of modes, but in general it's 2 different modes. I'd say there's the avant-garde electro-pop remix and then the 80s remix, for lack of a better term. The electro-pop can sort of range from something bordering on hyper-pop, very kind of skittish and aggravating, between sort of like mournful and slow and abstract, and then the 80s retro vibe basically is what it sounds like. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna go through the whole album. I'm not really gonna give you homework. I guess I will. I guess I will tell you to listen to, let's say, the first song, because if it's a remix album, every song is different. But the first song does a good example of what happens throughout this album, Whole Life, remixed by Yako Aino, who I reviewed, by the way. No one saw my review. I'll put a link to it at the end of the video. I reviewed Yako Aino's album, which I really enjoyed, actually quite a bit. Icelandic fella? No, Finnish fella. So what Yako Aino is able to do is create this like very guitar-led lo-fi sound to the original. These cool muted drums and slightly arpeggiated keyboards underneath, doing a lot with the song to the point where it's almost an improvement. I wouldn't say that it is, because the original is just such a masterpiece, but it's so close. What's cool is it builds on one of the themes there's a sort of a, musically, stylistically, there's a theme that undercuts Set My Heart on Fire immediately, which is something vaguely like 50s and 60s rock and roll. Something a little bit in that vein. And this sort of brings that to the fore, brings that what's sort of underneath, brings it to the fore, but in a very gentle way, with a beautiful like breakdown in here as well, where the sounds just cascade. And it reminds me of the Yako Aino Kalevi album that I reviewed and that I liked quite a bit. No one watched that review, by the way, so do check it out. I think it's pretty good. The next track is by A.G. Cook. Really? Hey, I know that name. I review A.G. Cook all the time. He's like one of the creators of the hyperpop sound and of the modern pop landscape, right? One of the main people who works with Charlie XCX. And the question is Perfume Genius buried under A.G. Cookness? If you told me A.G. Cook is doing Perfume Genius, I would expect it to sound like A.G. Cook featuring Perfume Genius, not the other way around. But somehow it manages to work. A lot of what makes this remix interesting is the snare usage. So in the beginning, there's these really loud, snappy snares, but then by the end, they become really boosted with reverb and become kind of sloppy. It's like the song itself is exhaling, and the exhalation goes through the snare. God, I sound like a yoga instructor. True story. I had a yoga instructor when I went to college. I went to college in Massachusetts, and she had a really thick Rhode Island accent. And we would be doing yoga, and she would say exhale in such a way that you had to laugh. Okay, now exhale. Exhale through your stomach. And we would just be cracking up. Okay, so it feels as though the snare is extending, and it's what's emphasizing what's happening in the song itself, where things are becoming like a little bit less tight and a little bit looser. Becomes almost an 80s sound at certain points, that kind of 80s mix with avant-garde. About 3/4 of the way through, there's just this really boosted bass with this snare, and it just becomes so massive. And one thing that I like that A.G. Cook does here is takes this one line from the song, and this happens throughout the album quite a bit, where one line that's particularly good is repeated, an echo in the canyon, and then that's got a lot of reverb on it, so it actually echoes. Playfully serious, okay? An echo in the canyon is a good example of Perfume Genius's good writing, but it's also kind of funny having that line echo. Also, some guitar comes in, actually becomes kind of epic and blown out and absolutely crazy, and it ends with this arpeggiator that sounds to me almost like a signature. Yeah, that's right. Mr. Crazy A.G. Cook does it. Now exhale. The next track is Without You, just great. Basically turns the original track into an 80s retro song. Even Prince-style funk guitar licks. Basically turns it into a sort of sad Prince song, which is a pretty good thing for it to do. But it still maintains its fundamental sadness of the original. I really enjoy what's happening here, where it changes the song and keeps it the same. It keeps that unsettling nature of the song, the weird kind of nasally voice, but at the same time, kind of doubles it, so it assumes a little bit more body. It's great. Next track is Jason. Jason, if you don't know the original song, it's one long story with no repeated lines about some guy banging a straight dude and stealing $20 out of his blue jeans. Perfume Genius says it a lot more poetically than that. But I really love this song. The original I love so much because it feels very much like a very real lived experience. It feels like it's saying a lot for a lot of people. It's representing a lot of life experiences, a lot of gay life experiences that I think a lot of people don't see represented very often. It's beautifully sung, beautifully written. But what makes the original so funny is it's just one story, just one song. Here, Planning to Rock remixes it into a house banger remix, where I know the song so well, but all of a sudden it's kind of bopping back and forth, and then he actually will double a few lines. Yeah, Bo, do you want to go try and sit in the sun? You can go. Sorry, my dogs are. I always record next to the porch, and so the dogs are always trying to find some place to sit in the sun. You have to excuse the noise. So what's cool is this song that's just one long line, he doubles and triples, even quadruples certain lines over and over again, such as Jason, there's no rush. This weird imploring to this lover, Jason, there's no rush. Jason, there's no rush. Really allowing you to sit with the song and sit with these lines and think what they mean. A good remix will do that. It gives you a chance to revisit and really think about this in this new context. Maybe the best part of the song, though, of this one is this instrumental bit with these synth lines that just kind of go and they end up inverting themselves, boop bip boop bip bip boop bip boop, it's just really nice. Next track, Leave, the Jenny Haval remix. This really emphasizes the something is off nature of the whole album, the kind of drowsy nature of the original, and accentuates it. Kind of the unsettling, everything is just worn down and warped in this version. The synthesizers are just so loud and dwarfing everything else. But if you listen carefully, there's a little funky bit in the back. Then she does something weird. Seriously playful, playfully serious. She comes onto the track and says, "Hello, listeners. I had a hard time remixing this album. Let me tell you about my experience remixing this. I think about reverb, and reverb takes me on a journey." I don't know what to think about this. Part of me hates it because it's not good for re-listening to have someone just showing up and talking about what it is to remix a song. But then part of me loves it because it must be hard to remix a song on a basically perfect album. I think I like it, although it does make the remix a lot more about her than it does about the song. But maybe it doesn't, because maybe it's actually about our experience with the song And maybe it's actually a super meta commentary on remixing itself, where you're going on a journey. And maybe she's actually making my point for me about this asymmetrical collaboration that is represented by a remix album. I feel like that could be a paper. Asymmetrical collaboration as represented by remix albums. On the Floor is the next track. This is produced by Initial Talk. I don't know who they are, but it just makes it a super 80s song right here. Very cute and cool. Like, the voice gets a little bit cut out and makes it sort of very upbeat and boppy, and amplifies the original catchiness, because it is actually a catchy song. Your Body Changes Everything is probably my favorite track on the album. Remixed by Boy Harsher. This is the greatest mixture between the avant-garde sensibility and the 80s sensibility. So it makes it sort of an 80s song, but then changes so many things. It almost turns it into feeling like a song that's almost like a New Order song. But then like the chorus hardly even fits anymore into the measures, the way that it's remixed. And then this I Know, which is maybe the most beautiful part in the original album, is remade, different, and just beautiful and so good. Really, really a beautiful example of what happens on this remix album. Moonbend, the Nydia remix, makes it slightly more avant-garde-y, all these kind of crazy loops and attacking sounds. But the voice is really still always there, almost like a salsa beat a couple times we hear on this album, and right here. Even sort of brings the sea shanty nature of the song and the instruments back in at some point. It is the song and it isn't the song at the same time. Good remix. Just a Touch. Now, Just a Touch is my favorite song on the album. Maybe, I don't know, it's not my favorite song of the year last year, but easily in the top 5 of my favorite songs of the year. Amazing song about a homosexual encounter in World War II, and longing and forbidden love and all this stuff. A beautiful song. But here, Danny L. Harrell turns it basically into an anthem. Because he actually wrote for Charlie XCX, the most anthemic song on that album. Super pitched up weird voices, high synthesizer sounds, cuts up the lyrics, devolves into kind of crunchy synth bits. There's even sort of jungle drum beats, like the Amen break is on there. It becomes sort of hyper pop, and it just sort of takes the most gentle and loving song and turns it into some kind of club banger. It's great. It's not too forced. It doesn't destroy the original. It's a lot like Jason in the way that it takes one of the most tender, loving songs about love and rejection and fear and repressed homosexuality and makes it fun. Playfully serious, seriously playful. I'm telling you, this paper keeps writing itself. Next track, Nothing at All, is cool because it strips the original of its kind of faux Springsteen nature. I can never tell how much I like Nothing at All just because of that Springsteen-ness of it. But this is my favorite. I said the other one was my favorite. I think this is my favorite. It's hard to choose. That's another good sign of a good remix album. You can't choose which is your favorite. Because here, it starts off with these insect sounds and all these weird, odd vocalizations. This is the most amount of work, I think, done on this album. Because some weird rhythms come in and a flute comes in, rhythms with clapping and production. Things feel taken apart and put back together, but very, very differently, with all different body parts, Clapping and percussion, at times you feel like it's able to have the longing of the original, right? You feel that longing, but it's not the same drive. So I don't know how you can take a great driving song, take the drive out, and still have it be a great song, but they did it. One More Try is produced by Actress, and this is my favorite. No, it's not, but this is another one of my favorites, because there's really great guitar additions on here. Just really, it turns it into just a great layered guitar song, and even ends with kind of a bass bit. And the whole thing is a very thoughtful extension on the original melody and the mood of the song, which is why I think you could listen to these back to back and not get bored, because you never feel like you are out of the Set My Heart on Fire immediately world. You are always there. You're very comfortably there. Some Dream, produced by Corliss, it was funny because it was playing in the other room and my wife was cooking and there's a lot of sound. And she goes, "Is that the music? Or is Toby digging into the couch?" It starts off kind of clicky, Apparently this person works with FKA Twigs, which I think I'll have to review at some point because everyone keeps telling me that that's like the greatest thing ever. I listened to it and it just didn't grab me, but I think that was a mistake. I think I need to revisit that. Certainly this production is great. Super loud, wailing synthesizers. Sounds like a klaxon, like almost like a horror movie at times. Nice vocal manipulation. The synthesizers are kind of like haunting and beautiful, adding these sort of top notes over everything. It's really quite nice. I sort of feel like it should have been the last track, you know, just sort of spiritually, the way that it kind of goes out, but they had to stay true to the original track listing, which means you have to end with Borrowed Light. Kind of mixed up and bizarrely distorted, kind of blown out bass sounds. It never quite gets started. It almost starts to become a dance bit, and then it doesn't. But in that way, it reminds me a lot of the original, which also, appropriate for an ending, doesn't always feel like it's got started. So there's my review. Definitely worth reviewing. I mean, listening to. Just, I can't wait to be done with this album so that I can listen to the other Perfume Genius albums. Because, well, let me talk about my channel. Let me talk about Patreon. I now have Patreons. I know I'm supposed to call them patrons, but they're not patrons, they're Patreons. That's why the E's there. And the idea behind my Patreon, if you don't know, is not to give me money, because I'm not going to keep any of the money. I'm going to use all the money to buy music, to give money to musicians, big and small, so that I can have more albums. Because I've spent over $600 since I started this channel on music. And that's cool, but maybe you can help me help artists. So once a week, along with like extra videos, I did a whole video about how I hated this commercial that I saw on Facebook for Rough Trade Records. A little thing about class and taste. That's what's already on Patreon. I don't have many Patreons now, but I appreciate them. So I'm gonna have a handwritten thing thanking them. So these are my Patreons. Hopefully I'll have to get multiple sheets of paper eventually. My daughter wants to start writing them, so they might get a little bit fancier. So thank you, Gammon Lord, and Dreadly77, and Blair Carlisle, and Squimmy Dum, because I like that you support the channel so much. So you can feel free to give to that, or not. But this is a good example. This cost me like 20 bucks, 30 bucks, 30 bucks. Totally worth it. Totally worth it. Okay, well, until next time, I'm going to flip. So the dogs, whenever I do these videos, the heating vent is over there and it makes a lot of noise. So I have to flip the dog's bed over on top of the vent so that it's not that comfortable. So let's look at Toby. Let's look at him there. Do you see how uncomfortable he looks? All right, I'm gonna flip it over. There's the camera.